Yeah.
Okay. Sure. All right, let's, we can go over some updates right now. Let's see. We have the BLM grant still out on the streets right now. It's BLM Community Assistance Grant. It's on our natural resources page. You can find it there. It is a grant designed to help communities out adjacent to BLM land. The grant stipulates any community within 1 mile would be eligible for that grant. That ends March 31st.
Uh-oh.
Okay, March 31st. If you need any more information of that grant, just please reach out to me directly.
Kevin, how much money is it?
$90,000.
And it's, the whole thing is still sitting out there.
We have 90,000 available for this application.
Okay. I'll be talking to my neighborhood again.
Let's see, on the dumpsters and bin rentals, we were able to get that figured out. It took a little while, but I think we're in a good spot right now. I have agreements with Republic and Cascade Disposal to rent bins or dumpsters throughout the county. We've been kind of running this as a pilot right now. I have about, I think, 16 communities signed up for that. But if any other community would like to get bins or dumpsters for the community plus disposal, we can cover that. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is community based. I'm not really offering this to individual property owners. But if you have a community or you know a community that might be interested in that program, please reach out to me directly and we'll get you on the list. I'll take requests until the end of the month, and then we probably got to secure it at that point. Let's see, for reporting, the fall grant that we had last fall, the fuel reduction grant, reporting will be due at the end of June. I'm gonna get the reporting form out shortly. It'll look very similar, if not identical, to the one that we did for those last spring grants. So the things you'll kind of need is a narrative of what the work you had done, especially if there was a slight change in your scope of work, some kind of budget to where that money was spent and any match that was provided, and then any documentation as far as receipts, and we always love photos too. That really helps tell the story. So if you have any photos that you can attach to that reporting application, I'd really appreciate it. And again, that'll be out within the next month or so, so just please be patient. Once that reporting form is up and running, I'll send it out to all the people that were a part of that. And I think that's all oh, one more thing, the qualified pool, we have solidified the qualified pool for 2024. We had 17 vendors on that pool this year, and I can send that out shortly. We'll probably send it out through our Project Wildfire channels and also through the neighborhood coalition channels as well. Make sure everyone has that list. It's most people or most vendors that have been around a while, but we do have a handful of new vendors on that are eager to get some work in Deschutes County. That's what I have for grants. Yes, you want to?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. And Corinne's got some updates as well.
This one. Right, so we got 5 and 3 dates all figured out. I even got Sun River's dates, and looks like the landfill, we're doing May 3rd through May 12th, and they're open 7 days a week. And then the transfer stations, they're all doing the same May 31st through June 8th, but some of them are open on different days. So in Sisters, they're only open Wednesdays or Saturday. So Pine and Redmond, they're Monday through Saturday. And then Sun River compost site is going to be the first weekend in May, the 3rd and 4th. And I'm getting flyers printed out. So if anyone wants flyers, I should have them pretty soon. Get just the flyers. Other than that, well, we're still finding that. so.
Okay.
I don't wanna announce it. I mean, it's not really.
We are planning a barbecue in June. It's not official yet, but the plan is to be 18th.
We're looking at 18.
We're looking at the 18th, the afternoon, the 18th down in Sun River, at the Shark in June for a barbecue. Be recognition for all the hard work that's been going on throughout the county, and just a way to convene a lot of community members. So stay tuned for that. We'll have the finalized dates and times and everything about that. Sure. Yeah.
Right, other than that, today we have Ariel Cowan talking to us from Oregon State University Extension. And she's gonna be talking about fire resistant plants today, and I think some of the new plant guides stuff. Let's be excited.
Yeah. Oh, can I share?
Yes. Sorry,
Yeah, no worries. Awesome. Well, should I just go for it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, well, I'll just introduce myself again. My name is Ariel Cowan. I work for Oregon State University Extension. I am your regional fire specialist. I cover about 8 counties, Central Oregon and South Central. And really excited that I got to work with our OSU Extension horticulturist, Amy Jo Detweiler, on the fire resistant plants for home landscapes publication. This has been a very popular publication in the past, and we have a brand new update for this publication. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what led to updating this publication, a little bit of details of what's new about it, and how it can be used in the home ignition zone. And also bear with me, I get out of breath really easily these days. Oh, and I want to give a shout out to Heather Miller from OSFM that I adapted some of her slides for this presentation too. So I just wanted to start out with a brief introduction if folks are not familiar with Extension. So it's really a great organization that is obviously associated with OSU. And we have offices all throughout the state, in every county. And what we focus on is sharing research-based knowledge. It doesn't have to be research just from OSU, but we do get to be directly connected to the research that's at OSU. And we focus on trying to address issues that matter to both urban and rural Oregonians. And we do a lot of that work through partnerships and providing programs that the focus is to contribute to healthy, prosperous, and sustainable future for all of us. Now, I'm part of the OSU Extension Fire Program, which I know many people are not as familiar with. And that's because that program is new as of the last 3 years. And you know, a lot of people know of Extension for what do folks are familiar with Extension for?
4-H.
4-H, there you go. What else? How about agriculture?
Forestry.
Yep, master gardeners, right? Some of, And so with this fire program, we now have a team of specialists. There's 6 of us around the state. We do have larger regions where, you know, we have multiple counties, as you heard, and we're focused on fostering fire adapted communities and resilient landscapes through place-based partnerships. And so we do a lot of different things, but through this image here in the bottom right, we focus a lot on providing education and outreach and engaging programs to increase wildfire awareness, wildfire preparedness, concepts about prescribed fire, ways that we can mitigate wildfire risk. Oh, no, it's not finding advance. There we go. So for today's presentation, I we'll be talking about that new publication, but I wanted to start out with an introduction of why we would even want to have a publication like this. So why are our homes wildfire prone in the first place? Then I'll talk a little bit about what's new with that guide, and then how we can use that guide in the home ignition zone. And if anyone's not familiar with that term, I'll talk a little bit about it. So many of us are very familiar with the fire. This is the fire triangle and the fire behavior triangle. It's really just trying to show what are, for each triangle, the three main contributing factors to that. You know, for example, on the left, that's the fire triangle. What's required for the chemical reaction of fire, and then on the right, those are the three factors that influence the behavior of fire. And so what is the common factor for both fire to exist and fire behavior? Fuel, yes. So what are fuels in our landscape, and what are fuels in Central Oregon?
Like bitter brush, manzanita, juniper.
Yeah, juniper, bare brush, manzanita, so plants. How about homes? Our homes are also fuel. And so with the increasing threat of wildfire throughout the West and certainly in Central Oregon, we have to consider that our landscapes are fuel, our homes are fuel, and that's, you know, where we really are trying to influence reducing all that risk for all of us. And I can get into greater detail about the background of why many of us, and all of us in Central Oregon, are at risk to wildfire. But if you want to hear more about that, you're going to have to attend one of our workshops. This then plays into what's called the Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI. And how many of you would say that this is a specific location on a map? Anyone think it's a specific location? Maybe you've seen maps where there is a zone around a community, and that's called the Wildland Urban Interface. But actually the definition is any location where wildfire can spread from vegetation to structures. Do you have vegetation around your homes that can potentially spread wildfire to a structure, to your home? Yes. So even if you see a zone on a map that's around the outside of a community, outside of a city or something like that, that's really just for regulation purposes. But I want all of us in Central Oregon, in Deschutes County here, to think that we are all in the Wildland Urban Interface, because we all live in a place where wildfire can spread from vegetation to structures. And so that can look differently in different places. Often many of us are thinking of in the wildlands and rural areas that's actually what the Wildland Urban Interface is. But as we're seeing more and more wildfires today that can be in urban locations. So really it can be examples all across the spectrum of WUIs. And so I want folks to think about how this is not so much a fire problem, but a structure ignition problem. I hear from many people like, oh, well, that's someone else's problem, that they need to stop that wildfire from getting to my house. Because of, that's great that we have our fantastic responders who are trying to do that. There can be situations where those resources are overwhelmed. And so we can really combine the effort to reduce risk while they're working hard on preventive work or actively fighting fire. At the same time, we can consider what reduces the chances that our homes ignite. We can really focus on how this is a structure ignition problem, as opposed to, oh, that's a fire from far away problem and you're just waiting for it. And this is a really powerful image. This is actually from the Skeleton Fire in Southeast Bend, 1996. And I'm going to talk about this image later in the presentation. But that there were some factors for the landscaping around that home, and also some of the structural components of that home that helped that home to survive that fire. So what are some ways that we can reduce our structure ignition problem? Well, as I was saying, we can reduce we can use non-combustible materials in building our homes. Once again, if you want to hear more about that, you're gonna have to attend one of our workshops. And the workshops I'm referring to, I will talk about later, and I'll share a link how people can sign up for those. But we can also reduce fuels. We were looking at those two triangles and how fuel is the common factor of and also what we can influence. We can't influence weather and topography so much, but we can influence how much fuel is in our landscape and around our homes. And so we can do that by creating defensible space around our homes. And many of us love to garden. Many of us care about the aesthetics or the value of our homes, or want some privacy or things like that. So we often it feels like spring. We're getting into that time where everybody's working around their homes, and that's a great time to be thinking about if you have defensible space. And so a factor in that is using fire-resistant plants. That's an opportunity. Not only can you focus on reducing those fuels, but you can also focus on what plants you're choosing to put in that landscaping. So what does fire resistance mean? It means, well, from an ecological scientific perspective, we're thinking about if a plant community or particular plants can persist, can survive a fire, and how they're affected by that fire. But also it's the ability to resist ignition and not sustain continued combustion. So there are characteristics of those plants that reduce the intensity of the fire, or the fire's put out a lot easier, or perhaps they just don't even easily ignite in the first place. So that's where the Fire Resistant Plants for Home Landscapes publication came in. It has had many iterations. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. If you see this, this is the cover of the booklet from August 2006 edition. So pretty impressive to think about. It's been 18 years since it's been updated, and really exciting that now this is what the new one looks like, and it's got a more modern feel to it. It's got more plants, and it also addresses many topics that were not addressed before. And that's where it was really exciting to work with Amy Jo on this, that she is very focused on horticulture. And so she reached out and was like, well, let's definitely have someone involved who can speak to the wildfire situation, and how can we incorporate that and new elements into this booklet. So we officially published, it took us a while. And I apologize, it took so long, but I'm so thankful for all of your patience. We published it in 2023 in October, and it was developed by evaluating lists and scientific literature on plant flammability. I know that there are a lot of other examples out there of plant lists, that people have been asking for them. Plant lists, you may find some from other states, because people were just desperate to use something that was more updated. And the difference there, I can't speak to all those other lists, but I can speak to that the lists of plants in this publication, each plant had to have some kind of scientific literature to back it up in order to make it into the booklet. So that's why you're not going to see every kind of plant in there. If there aren't any studies about that plant, and its fire resistance, then we didn't want to run the risk of, putting it in and having somebody, be confused or, it not be the appropriate plant. And, we now have a website, interactive website that goes with the publication. Previously, it was just a landing page and a PDF that you can download, but now it's a more attractive website. So for folks who really only want to get their information online, that they can get it that way. And then we are also in the process of printing, because a lot of us like those nice hard copies, the nice shiny booklet is going to be in hand, excuse me, by the end of this month, the beginning of April. So what are some updates to this guide? The guide has over 150 plants in it. And that covers, we've got ground covers, perennials, broadleaf evergreens, shrubs, and trees. There are, 43 new plants. So that's great that we have some expanded plant options. We had a lot of requests for more plants because some of the HOAs, some of the contractors, landscapers are going by a strict list from some of the CCNRs. And so by having some more plants in this booklet, perhaps that opens up more options for you all, more suggestions of plants to use. There are symbols for each plant, so you can know whether to use them for certain uses or adaptability. I'll talk about that in a moment. For example, if you wanted a deer-resistant plant, there's a symbol for that. And then the new symbol that was not in the previous guide is indicating native plants. There's also new topics. We certainly had to address the topic of mulch. We really wanted to hit home on the importance of maintenance. And we talked a little bit in the booklet about invasive plants and absolutely made sure that every plant that was in the booklet is not on the invasive plant list for Oregon, Washington, or Idaho. So I will say about this guide, it is being used for the whole Pacific Northwest. That's pretty broad. And so that's why, even though both Amy Jo and I are based here, that we end up talking about a lot of ornamental plants that some folks might say, well, that doesn't make sense for Central Oregon. That's why we have some indicators in there that you're going to have to look at, and you're gonna have to think about the hardiness zone of whether that plant can survive here. So we had the challenge of trying to balance that. It would work for the Pacific Northwest and also Central Oregon. Some of the research variables, basically the factors that we were considering when looking at each plant species and checking the scientific literature. We were looking at moisture content, mineral content that was needed. The volatile oils, basically the oils that can make a plant more flammable. The height and the width of these plants, how ignitable they are, if they can sustain on the landscape, their combustibility and their consumability. And then we also factored in for plant selection, if they're considering their site, if they would be appropriate for a particular site. We put in some notes about how big they would be at maturity, because that's a really important thing that people should be considering. You don't want to put in a tiny plant. Obviously, when you get at the nursery, it's going to look really small, but if you're reading this booklet and you see, oh, that's actually going to get pretty big, that's an important consideration for where you place it on the landscape. The function of that plant, adaptability, and making sure it's not invasive, and the quality of that plant. And these are all things that folks should consider when they're selecting the plants from the list, if it's going to be good for their location, good for their garden, their landscape around their home. So I was talking about that key with the different symbols. These are the ones that we have. So we we're considering whether they can use less water or whether they need more water. I think that's really important for here in Central Oregon, that we try to consider water use. Clearly, water is a limiting resource in this region, and that some of these other factors as well. Some folks want to attract pollinators. You can attract pollinators and still have a fire-wise landscape. So I think that that's great that we have all these different factors, all these different symbols for each plant, so that can help you to select what you would want. That they're not what? Deer proof. Yes. Heather said there's no such thing as deer proof. Yes, here it says deer resistant. You know, if the deer are really hungry, well, we can't control that.
Maybe
But
artificial plants.
yeah, right. So as I mentioned earlier, this publication is for all of the Pacific Northwest, so you still want to make sure you're considering the plant hardiness zone. You know, a plant that you might put in if you live in Madras might not work for you if you live in Sun River. So I would make sure that you're going to the plant hardiness USDA website. You can put in your address into the map there. It's now an interactive map, and you could figure out more specifically what your USDA plant hardiness zone is. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about characteristics of highly flammable plants and how that compares to characteristics of not as flammable or fire resistant plants. So highly flammable plants, they often contain dry or dead material, twigs, needles, leaves within the plant. We see that a lot with these shrubs. For example, these juniper variety shrubs or arborvitae varieties that people love to use as hedges. And what's wild is if you look inside them, or say you cut into them, they're only green on the outside. The living part is on the outside. On the inside, it's all dry, dead material. Imagine this going up in flames. How do you think that would go? So not only does it have a lot of fuel, we're thinking about all these plants in terms of fuel, but also they contain volatile oils, waxes, and terpenes. So in addition to them being really easy to catch fire because it's dead, dry material, it also has these oils that makes it that much more flammable. So, you know, not a great combination. So do we really want those types of plants right next to our homes? No, that's so other characteristics of highly flammable plants, often the leaves are aromatic. If you crush them, they have a smell. The sap also can have a smell, and the sap of the plant, basically like what the liquid it exudes is gummy or resinous. And then in some cases they can have looser papery bark. And here's another example of the dead inside of a hedgerow shrub. Here's some more photos on the left there. That's arborvitae, and this is what when you're driving around neighborhoods, you can't not notice these anymore, or at least for me. They really catch my eye now of how many I see of these. And what do you think? Why a lot of people use these types of plants in their landscaping? Screening.
They grow really fast.
They grow really fast. Yeah, so they can have their place.
They go good with bark mulch.
They go good with bark mulch. They can have their place, but not next to the home. Like, that's just asking for trouble. And then what do? They drop a ton of leaf litter. And it's just making more and more for you to clean up, and all of that is very flammable. I'm not sure why a lot of the landscapers really love Mugo pine here. We had a workshop last Friday. It was really interesting so we had the workshop specifically for landscapers and contractors. And there were some of the landscapers there that were like, oh, but Mugo pine is in the CCNR for, I can't even remember what community they were referring to.
Probably a lot of.
That it was a plant that was acceptable to put right next to a home. And unfortunately, there's that disconnect. We're all here working on trying to get through that disconnect and make a difference so that something like Mugo pine is not planted right next to a home. Also, when a lot of fir trees are planted or spruce are planted right next to a home, you end up having these branches that are touching the roofs. And those are plants that also have those volatile oils and are more flammable. Here's a brief example of, obviously it's not here, but in Ashland, the Oak Mill fire in 2010, where they were using Leland cypress. This is actually the road on the top of this image is actually I-5. And the fire started on the other side of I-5 and hopped over the highway and ended up burning several homes because this plant, Leland cypress, was used as a privacy screen between the highway and the homes and in between the homes. So the flammability of those plants was seen as a large contributing factor to why those homes were lost. Okay, now getting into the characteristics of fire-resistant plants. Many of them are broadleaf deciduous. That means that they have these wide leaves like a maple, and they drop their leaves in the winter. But there are some examples of thicker leaved evergreens that are also fire resistant. There's not as many of them, but there are some options because some folks, especially if they care about privacy, they don't want a plant that's going to drop its leaves in the winter. You're looking for leaves that are supple, moist, and are easily crushed. The trees grow in a form that's not bushy, and they don't accumulate a lot of dead wood or dead material. The shrubs are often low growing, and they also don't accumulate a lot of dead material. And they have a sap that's more water-like, not as gummy, not as resinous, and typically they don't have a strong odor. And I should just note that even if a plant is deemed fire resistant, that moisture can change seasonally. So what does that mean? That even if you're using fire resistant plant, you want to keep it healthy. If we're getting heat dome effects or heat dome events where it's a super hot, dry summer, that can affect the flammability of these fire resistant plants. Maybe they're not going to be as flammable as an arborvitae, but they are going to be losing their moisture seasonally. Fire resistance can also change as a plant matures, as it grows larger. And then there's just other environmental factors that affect their fire resistance. So we want to keep them healthy. The ones that are right next to the home, it's best to keep them irrigated in order to keep them healthy. And yeah, I'll go into that a little more. So in the guide, the pages look kind of like this, how we go through each of these plants. Here's some examples of ground covers, and yeah, it's just we try to make it really easy to read and with attractive photos. And so as I was alluding to earlier with the maintenance and the importance of keeping these plants healthy and how they can change throughout the season, fire resistance does not mean fireproof. So anything can burn, any of these plants are fuel, you know? So, the maintenance piece is really important, not only the irrigation part, but also getting in there, every spring and clearing out the dead leaf material that accumulated from the season before.
No, ice plant was not recommended in Southern California. That was on the list to
Ah,
have,
okay, so by the way, there are different species of ice plant.
yes.
So there is an ice plant in California that is invasive. That plant is not in this guide. There are only non-invasive types of ice plant that are in this guide. So if you are thinking about the ice plant in California that they make sure to not have in the guide, totally different species than what's in this booklet. I know we hear that a lot, people being like, what, why would you have ice plant in there? It's not the invasive kind, it's a totally different kind.
Good.
Yeah. I know, I had a job once where I was pulling ice plant, so, I was definitely clued in, like, it shouldn't be that one, and we knew. Yeah. So, you really want to design your landscape around your homes with fire in mind. You can still incorporate other goals like for wildlife, or pollinators, or water use. But you can do that in addition to considering fire. And so you can do that by considering the placement of these plants, the spacing of these plants, making sure you're clearing some of that fuel to break up the fuel continuity. I'll get into that a little bit. Removing ladder fuels, I'll explain that term too. You want to keep, if you do have a lawn, we're not encouraging lawns, but if you do have a lawn, or you have, say, native grasses, that before wildfire season, they should be mowed to 4 inches or lower. And as I don't think it's bad that I put this in there multiple times. Proper care, pruning, irrigation, the importance of maintenance. You'll probably get sick of hearing me say that. So we can use this guide in the concept of home ignition zones. And I imagine many of you have heard of this term, home ignition zones. We talk about it a lot in our workshops, the Wildfire Home Protection Strategies workshops. And we walk people through how to consider each one of these zones. And so that first zone is the first 5 feet around your home. Pretty cool that Ben Fire is putting out a campaign right now of own your zone. Basically own the first 5 feet. If there is nothing else you can do, at least focus on what you're doing in the first 5 feet around your home. And then there's the immediate zone, 5 to 30 feet, and the extended zone, 30 to 100 feet. And this booklet is going to be really helpful for the folks who are considering the 5 to 30 foot zone and the 30 to 100 foot zone. I just wanted to throw this in there. You saw from that fire behavior triangle in the beginning, topography is a factor in fire behavior. So that's why if you live on a slope, you should consider those recommendations for the size of the zones, that you expand them if you're on a slope. So for example, the intermediate zone should go out to 40 feet instead of 30 feet if you are on a 10% slope. This is a really busy image. This is an image that is in, there's a lot of information here. I'm not expecting you to digest it all, but this is something that was created for the booklet, just to give some guidance, some examples of what folks can do. Basically in the bottom left, those are some recommendations of what to consider with the landscaping. And then on the top right, there's what's not recommended. And there's plenty to talk about with what we don't want to see with landscaping. Okay, so what if your yard is less than 100 feet? Maybe some of you are thinking about that. What if your neighbor's home is within that 100 feet? Any thoughts? What would you do? How would you consider the home ignition zones? Asking questions. You're on the spot in the morning.
So that
That's the tough one because it involves communicating with your neighbors.
That's right. Thank you, Dean. In this case, you would want to communicate with your neighbors, but what else can you do? Say your neighbors don't live there. Or not full time, or you have a hard time getting hold of them, I don't know.
That's also a very tough one.
It is a tough one, but.
And a frequent complaint.
And a
I've done all this
frequent
work and,
Mhm,
my neighbors live out of state and,
mhm.
they don't,
Reality.
they either don't care or don't wanna do it.
Yeah, so Dean was saying how, it could be a challenge because it's hard to get hold of them, or perhaps the neighbor doesn't care. This is why we encourage you to focus on what you do have control of, just like any of our therapists tell us. Focus on what we can control, which is honestly starting with the home and the first 5 feet. Say your yard goes out to the second zone, then that's great, you can work on that too. But really, we always tell folks to focus on that first zone and the home, because that's where the research has shown we can have the greatest impact in reducing risk. Yes, Dean.
There was a pretty good example just this week in the news. Fairly typical building here in Bend, I think it was southeast Bend. Couple of 2-story houses, they're 15 feet apart. They have wooden siding, they're newer houses, have wooden siding. And then they have a wooden fence in between the houses, which are only 15 feet apart. And I think it was like improper disposal of coals.
Of ashes.
Burn pit or something, but it ignited the side of the one home, and the adjacent home was almost immediately involved.
Yeah, so, there are many examples. I'm sure some of the folks that I often get to work with can also cite some examples of where it was really important to focus in on that first zone around the home, and that made a big difference. Of course, it would be wonderful if you can get on board with your neighbor. Who knows, maybe if you do that great work, changing up your landscaping, your neighbor might see that and think, oh, that's a good idea, I should do that too. That's what we hope for. And that's why it's so great we have the Firewise communities where you can all share what you're doing and people are inspired by all of you. That's how it gets done.
And don't forget that insurance companies are raising rates like crazy.
And
Yeah.
there's the insurance factor in it. So there's multiple incentives for why people want to be considering this. But at the very least, if you have overlapping zones with your neighbor, be focused on at least those, your home and the immediate zone. And if you're able to, if you have more yard, then you can focus on the
Quick question,
Excellent.
in zone 1, you don't have trees, but we have the native pine trees, and I know we're gonna get questions. Should I, in that 5-foot zone, remove that pine tree, although it can keep embers, but we're kind of trying to work with our design review committee in allowing people if they want to take them out. Just thoughts on the pine tree.
Yeah, so one thing to consider is always thinking back to fuel. And I don't end up having time to get into this in this presentation, but the size of the fuel, the amount of surface area of the fuel factors into how flammable it is, how easy it is to catch fire. And so if we're thinking about a large old growth ponderosa pine that has limbs that are higher up, that are not, the branches are not touching the roof, they're not within 10 feet of the roof, they actually can provide some ability to shield the house from fire. But the problem with that is that homeowner would need to make sure they're keeping on top of the maintenance, because there are gonna be that many more pine needles dropping onto that roof and within the home ignition zones. So it's like there's trade-offs. It can be really great, and we can have some of those trees next to the home, but we have to be on top of the maintenance because of that contributing of fuels that can really spread fire. If we're talking about a little tree, it's still really young, it's got all these needles that are touching the home. That's where then you don't want that there. Yeah, does that?
Yep,
make
no,
sense?
that helps.
Yep.
Can I interrupt again? What's the perspective on clumps of trees?
We will get into that.
Good.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just gonna very quickly go through these zones. The immediate zone is the ignition free zone. That's 0 to 5 feet. You don't want to see anything flammable there. This is where if you end up having a lot of these pine needles dropping from a nearby tree, and this can happen even if the tree's not even in your yard, it's in your neighbor's yard, that you're making sure, especially before wildfire season, that you're going through and doing this cleanup and this maintenance. Branches should not overhang the structure. There are some codes that may be coming out about the distance of branches to the home. I'll just say, you know, keep your ears out for the updates on that. That's fair enough. Just say it like that. Yeah. We see this all too often. So as I was just saying, those smaller needles, a type of fuel that's really easy to catch. What else is it about blue spruce that makes it really flammable? We talked about the characteristics of highly flammable plants. The oils, that's right,
And they tend to have branches that grow all the way down.
all the way down, right? And these plants can be absolutely beautiful and our birds love them, but don't have it right next to home. There's a way that you can still enjoy your blue spruce and have it not be a risk to the house. Same thing with these ornamental grasses. I'm not sure why we're really into putting them right next to the home. They're cool looking, but you can place them further away. Some other plants to avoid right next to the home in that first zone. You don't want the ornamental juniper, no mugo pine, people ask about native plants. They're like, but I really want my native plants. You can have your native plants, just not right next to the home. Because they are highly flammable. They're actually adapted to this ecosystem. You know, and this system here, before any of our homes existed, used to experience frequent fire. And so that's, you know, part of how they evolved on this landscape, that they're pretty flammable. I don't think we ever see, it's funny, Amy Jo said that she saw somebody plant a Scotch broom. I was really
Oh, no.
kind of shocked about that.
That's an invasive species.
It's invasive on the west side of the Cascades and in California. I don't think it could be, it couldn't thrive and be invasive here. But why even, anyway.
Yeah.
Manzanita, arborvitae, yeah, these are some examples. Okay, to mulch or not to mulch. We don't, okay, is mulch flammable? Yes, yeah. Do we want it in that first zone?
No.
No. All right, you guys passed. Yeah, people get really upset about this. We have fantastic alternatives. You know, in that slide before, we were talking about, we have, you know, all the different colors rock known to existence. So we can get creative with this. You can use pavers. You know, this is just that first 5 feet is really critical. And there are just too many instances of people having mulch right up next to the home, and then something like the hot ashes or cigarette, and then the side of the home catching fire. So it's really important, because we live in a really dry landscape, that we're trying to keep that moisture in. So using the rock mulch can also help with keeping that moisture in. And bare mineral soil is fine too. Yeah, it's important to consider the alternatives. And help keep me on time if I'm going way too. Okay. Okay, so now the intermediate zone, this is where we can start to use the fire resistant plant booklet more. Because in this 5 to 30 foot zone, we want it to look pretty. We want to consider plants that bring us joy, and we can use these fire resistant plants to do that. But we always need to consider making sure that they're still pruned, well maintained. that they're irrigated so they can be healthy and survive. You also don't want to be putting in a ton of money and then they die. You have to keep putting in new plants. So there's multiple reasons why you're wanting to consider this, but from a fire standpoint, you want to keep them lush and have those fire resistant characteristics maintained. We also want to make sure we're removing ladder fuels if there are any trees in this 5 to 30 foot zone. And essentially, we just want to keep it lean, clean, and green. That's the same for the intermediate zone. So maintenance is a huge piece. Yep.
I just thought I'd point out in this picture, there's a group of, what, 3 trees? But it really acts like one.
Yeah, yep. I know it's kind of hard for me to see the base if it's really just splits, but even if they were 3 trees, that's fine. Grouping clumps of vegetation are fine as long as you're considering that there's areas around it where the fire would not continue to spread. And that's where this image comes in. When we're thinking about fuels, we're thinking about the placement of these fuels and how continuous they are. So fire starts in one location. Can it easily spread all the way to your home? That's what you want to consider. You can have these groupings of plants, but then maybe there's some like path, like pavers or rock mulch that helps to separate it from the immediate zone. Another thing to consider is ladder fuels. So that actually is when there is all this vegetation that then allows fire to spread up into the canopy of the tree. And then that fire can spread through embers and end up the fire being in other locations throughout the landscape. And I just want to ask real quickly, what do you think the #1 way that homes ignite is? Is it by fire, that big flames that get right up to the home, or is it by embers that are flying through the air? Embers, that's right. So that's why we want to consider ladder fuels. We want to keep, if there was fire on the ground near our home, let's hope that doesn't happen, but say there was, that we want to keep that fire on the ground. So we can do that by reducing the fuels that help the fire lead up into the canopy of these trees. So we don't have an ember storm right next to our home from our own landscaping. Yeah, there's multiple ways that we can do that. We can consider, all right, there's some shrubs growing underneath our favorite tree. We want to keep the tree. We don't want to remove the tree. Say you really love that shrub. Then you need to consider either limbing the tree or removing the shrub. So the height of the plant that's underneath, multiply that by 3, and that's how that's the height that you should consider limbing the tree up to. So you've got those 2 options, either removing the shrub underneath. Well, you could also limb the branches in addition to that, or you could keep the shrub underneath and limb the tree up 3 times the height of that shrub. But you want to be careful about pruning. So this is really funky looking, right? I guess in this case, somebody was not pruning for the purpose of reducing ladder fuels. They were pruning for some odd aesthetics. And and yeah, they look like popsicles, but also squarish popsicles. I don't know. Yeah, what brand of lollipop is that? I don't think they realized that this, well, for one thing, is this a highly flammable plant? Yes.
Definitely.
Is this, you wouldn't want this right next to the home? Yeah, so there's that factor. But say this was not right next to the home, you still wouldn't want to prune it this way because they basically shaved off the growing part of the plant. So that plant is not gonna, where you see it's dead and exposed on the left there, that's not gonna grow back. That plant, that's not how that plant's gonna look for the rest of its life. And now it's exposing this dead, dry material that's easy to catch fire. So when considering the plants that you're putting in your landscape, consider that there are ways that you can prune them, and there are ways that you really shouldn't prune them, because then you're just killing the living part of the plant. Here's another example of pruning gone wrong. So when you cut the top of a shrub or even trees, you're cutting off what's called the leader or leaders of the plant. That's basically the growing region that it keeps growing from. They will want to keep growing upward. And if you're cutting that top of that off, that triggers the plant to create new leaders off to the sides. And sometimes that also triggers them to grow in a more bushy format. And that's basically creating more fuel, more flammable material. And then all that bushiness that has been triggered in its growth is now really easily catching additional fuel, all the leaf matter, and that's a pain to clean out. And some folks are not even going to clean that out either. So these are things to consider. Some types of plants, it's worse to actually top them. Okay, so we talked about vertical spacing, pruning. There's also importance of horizontal spacing. So if you're gonna put some shrubs, or not even shrubs, even if there's some nice perennials next to each other, this is where it gets back to considering the size of the plant at maturity. That you want to make sure that the spacing between those plants is 2 times the width of that plant. So, for example, if you have a 3-foot wide azalea, it should be 6 feet from the next shrub. So in this case here, we would want to remove these 2 plants. And the spacing applies to clumps and groupings too. But you can have a cluster. It's just, once again, that you want to make sure you're reducing the chances that then, if it caught fire, that then fire would spread from there to the next grouping. Yeah, so the mature size of the plants is an often overlooked factor to consider. I already hammered that one in. Back to the maintenance piece. If the plants are well maintained, that slows down the fire. Maybe it's not putting out the fire, but it's slowing it down enough in time for somebody to potentially get in there and put out the flames. That's the goal. I don't want to give the impression to anyone that it's going to save, like fire resistant plants will 100% save your home. No, but it's going to reduce that risk. It's going to, it'll be more likely that it slows down the fire spread if fire were to be in there. In some cases, it could put it out, but at the very least, we want it to slow it down so someone can get in there and do something about it. Here's some examples of ground cover. So for folks who are like, we really shouldn't have lawns, we need to rip out these lawns. There are alternatives. Yes, the lawn would be fire resistant if it's well maintained. But here's, example of actually looks pretty cool. These ground covers that are fire resistant. Here's another example. I'm not saying everything in this image is what we're going for, but if you're focusing in on how, okay, we've got a lot of use of ornamental rock or ornamental rock. That's funny. But yeah, different types of landscaping rock, different types of fire resistant plants, and some of them are in groupings, and it looks pretty nice.
But you've got a wood fence right there.
Yeah, that's why I was saying not everything.
Is good.
So in this case, in this picture, actually,
back
the wood fence is not attached to the home. But yeah, you're gonna see this no matter what, like not everyone's gonna be able to replace the entire fence around their home. And that's where in that workshop, we talked to people about, if you have to have a fence, you have a fence already, at least make sure the way that is attached to the home is not flammable. So for example, the gate, or some of the boards, replacing them with something non-combustible like metal. And yeah, in this case, it's hard to see, but the fence was actually separating the two houses. But what I really want to just show this image just for the plants. So I'm just gonna really quickly go through what, this, just a couple of pretty pictures. Okay. This is actually that ice plant, variety that's, not invasive. It's a good ground cover for this region, and the variety is Mesa Verde. Here's some other types. They're really pretty. And they have these thick, kind of succulent-like leaves. But I'm not gonna be able to go through all of the plants, so I would say just take a look at the booklet. There's far more fantastic examples in there. Okay, some perennials. There's so many varieties of penstemon, and we have some native penstemon too. People want to put in native penstemon, and they're fantastic. They're fire resistant. There's some examples. They look pretty great. And they're spaced out, and there's some rock in between them. Does anyone see something that is of concern in this picture?
Yes.
What do you see? No.
I can't give it.
You don't want it?
My eyes so trained.
Yeah, it's okay. No one else is
Anyway,
saying it.
the plan in the lower left. there.
In the lower left.
Look at me.
It's green, but
So,
not long.
it's cheatgrass. Cheatgrass, if anyone's not familiar with it, it's a highly invasive plant that also is very flammable. And so this just brings in the point again about maintenance being really important. You go in and you try to learn to recognize cheatgrass. Once you have learned it, you can't unlearn it. And sure, it's green at this stage, but the thing with cheatgrass is it dries out a lot quicker than all the other vegetation, and can just contribute to easy fire spread. So making sure you're pulling that out as you're going in there, or however you want to manage it. Lilies are some great perennials, irises, things like that. We have both the ornamental bleeding heart, and there's a native variety of bleeding heart. I was so happy that when I got, I was feel proud I was able to purchase a home. And there was a row of arborvitae that were touching my roof and my neighbor's roof. We took out the arborvitae, and there was a native bleeding heart that was just barely surviving underneath the arborvitae. We didn't put it there. It was just holding on. And now it's this glorious bleeding heart that comes back every year. So to me, win-win. Yeah. We have what do you call it? Azaleas, and there's also rhododendrons as well, are in the shrub section of this booklet. Different types of dogwood, shrub-like dogwood, tree-like dogwood. Those are also fire resistant. Many examples of trees, once again, it's you see those fire resistant characteristics that I went over earlier. Broadleaf, maintain their moisture. Different prunus varieties, those are also really great. And so, I truly believe that we can have these aesthetically pleasing, beautiful landscapes that are also fire resistant. When we do our workshops, Heather often talks about how it doesn't have to be a moonscape. I think there's a lot of folks who are under the impression that when we're telling people to change their landscape to consider wildfires, they think they need to remove everything and put rock everywhere, and that's just not true. Even with the mulch, you can put the mulch in certain places in the intermediate and extended zones, but just considering that it's not a continuous fuel source that can get to the home. Oh, well, and here I am talking about zone 3. So this is where if you have a property that goes out this far, you'll see, opportunities to incorporate more native plants. But you still want to reduce some of those fuels so that if fire were to catch in there, that it would reduce the fire intensity. You can do that with a lot of pruning, considering of taking out some of the shrubs. Say if you have a lot of sage brush or bitter brush, spacing them out. And then once again, the question about if groupings are okay, groupings are okay.
The fact that bitter brush is such a great feed for the
Oh,
meal deer.
Totally.
So is it really, you've got to take it out then?
No, I'm saying that you just want to space them.
Okay,
They're great to keep, yeah.
Also, bitter brush can actually be trimmed and turned into more of a shrub-like plant. So this, like I said, as long as it's not a continuous fuel source, if you kind of space them out, you can trim them down, and it actually stimulates the growth and becomes better browse for that animal.
Yeah, I have a slide on considering wildlife habitat, and maybe I'll just move it up further in the slide deck for next time. But I will get to that in a moment. We were talking about spacing of shrubs. How about spacing of trees? There are some recommendations from the NFPA on spacing, and this is considering the crowns of the trees, not the trunks of the trees, making sure that they're spaced out. But you see in this image here that there are still groupings. You can have some trees that are next to each other. Maybe the deer like to hide behind some groupings of trees, but then once again, that you're making sure that the area around it is not going to contribute to fire spread horizontally and fire spread vertically. So reducing the ladder fuels of those trees. Okay, now, how am I doing?
A little bit.
Okay.
More questions.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna wrap this up with, an example, this is, the skeleton fire once again from Southeast Bend, and in 1996, you saw this image earlier. What do you see here that you think helps contribute to this home surviving this wildfire?
Grass.
There's grass.
Immediate zone is bare.
What do you see that's not next to the home?
Well
Yeah.
fed and flammable.
Yeah, there's not a whole bunch of flammable vegetation right up next to the home. If they had done some creative things with rock mulch or not mulch, I hate calling it rock mulch. If they'd done some creative things with rock or pavers, that also could have worked just as fine as this green grass. But yeah, this is pretty impressive how this house was able to survive this. Because of the landscaping and the also I would say the roof too, and other factors about this home. Okay, then this is that same home 7 years later. Kind of interesting to see a couple of the ponderosa trees survived because of the landscaping. So it really goes to show that it helped to reduce the intensity, the heat that was experienced in those locations from that fire. And so if you're also wanting trees and plants to survive, this is another reason to try to reduce the fuels around them. It gives them a better chance. Okay, now this is the same house. I'm not sure if it's a different owner or not. 25 years later. What do you think has changed? What do you see? They've added some things.
We need to trim up a lot of those trees.
Yeah, so I mean, I do see that they're using some broadleaf, there's maybe that's aspen or something like that, which those are good. You still don't want the branches touching the home. But they put in a lot of, there's some shrubs, some hedges, some plants right up next to the home. It looks like maybe this is a blue spruce or something that's right next to the home now. Yeah, I'm not sure, like did we fail as a, opportunity to communicate with this homeowner? Or is this a new opportunity to talk to them? So, and then this also goes to show, if it looks like this around your home, it did not always look that way. You may not realize that there was a historic wildfire there, and that's why it looks so open near your house. And that doesn't mean that can't happen again, because as we had said earlier, embers are the #1 way that homes ignite. So I would still want, and there are plenty of fires that start over there. I would still want them to consider the landscaping and reduce those fuels next to the house. Yep.
In this most recent picture, that's something that happens with new construction frequently. They'll clear all around it for the build, and then after the structure is up, then the landscapers come in and surround it with sometimes
Right.
flammable stuff that wasn't there in the first place.
Which is why we're really trying to connect more with the landscaping community. That workshop we had last Friday offered them continuing education credits as an incentive to get them in the door and be able to talk to them about a lot of this stuff. But also all of you are educated about this, and you can talk to your landscapers or your neighbors and so on. So really quickly, wildlife habitat goals, maintain complexity. So if you want to keep that wildlife habitat aspect in your landscaping in the outer zones or beyond 100 feet, consider that you're still reducing the fuels and breaking up the chance of the fires spreading continuously or vertically. But you can also have these groupings and these patches, these areas of where there might be, a pile of dead material, or there could be, there could be a snag or something like that, a dead tree. And that's okay, as long as, like I said, it's not contributing to that increased likelihood of fire spreading.
And that's a strategy that seems to work better when you have acreage.
Yes, I just had to throw this in there though.
Yeah.
Because people ask about it. Okay, if you're unhappy with the plant selection in this guide, you can search for other plants by typing in fire resistant plants, but you want to put in this site edu, because this will help you to find scientific literature that's has some research backing. So I recommend that. And then we have in the back of the guide, congratulations on your fireized landscape, and we're trying to see that some folks really love using social media. So how else can we share the word, spread the word about how people can promote that they've made their landscaping consider wildfire, and inspire others to do the same. So lastly, I'm just gonna say if anyone wants to learn more about this, join us for one of our wildfire home protection strategies workshops. We have 5 of them coming up all throughout Central Oregon. I can also post in the chat the link to register for these workshops. And that also we've got wildfire preparedness fairs that are coming up all around the region as well, that our fantastic partners are working to put on through the Central Oregon Fire Prevention Co-op. And that is all I've got.
Ariel, do we have
Yes.
to pre-register for these workshops, or can you?
Prefer if you did, just so we can count handouts and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it would help. Thank you.
And I add one more workshop to that list, but I told Robin Church I would.
Oh, yeah.
On March 28th, there's gonna be 2 sessions at the Bend Library. One's at 3:30 to 5:30, another one's from 6 to 8 that evening. The speakers or the topics will be home hardening, defensible space, and fire smart landscaping, be ready for evacuation, and becoming a fire-wise community. Ariel, I think you're there for that one as well, and Heather's also. And to register, it'll be both in person and virtual, but to register, if you just type in Google Summit West Living with Wildfire. And that'll take you to the City of Bend website, and there's an event summary there, and that shows you how to register on the event summary.
And it's great, Carrie put in the chat, the registration link for the March 28th event.
Oh, great. So a couple ways to get there.
Also in the chat, Heather put the flyer for all the workshops, so you can find the registration link in that PDF.
And how do we get the new guides, the bigger for those that, I mean, I like the little postcard ones because you can take it to the nursery.
Yes,
but how
and
do
I
you get-
have some, if anyone wants to go home with one today, for these postcards, which have a QR code on the back. Do I have it on this here? Oh boy. Yeah, so this is the card I'm talking about. I have these. If people want more of these, contact me. I can get these to you. You can hand these cards out anywhere. But for the question was about how we can get the full-on booklet. We are printing many of them, and they should be in hand. Let's just say the beginning of April. So any events from then on, maybe this is encouragement to come to a workshop. Or just connect with me and we can get you some.
Oh, okay.
Or, you know, Heather is going to actually. Her agency put in for printing far more than mine even did, so. Maybe you can speak to Heather. But we're very excited to get the beautiful in-hand booklet to all of you. Other questions? How's the chat doing? Yeah, Paula, reach out if you want some of those cards. Oh, I could put my email address in the chat. And folks can reach out to me. I can get you some of those cards. So, yeah, questions?
Thanks for presenting today.
Yeah.
And, I've been waiting to see the new updated material. I think it's very timely.
Yes, we were really, really wanting it to be out in time for May Wildfire Preparedness Month and all the events that are being hosted right now. People are working on their landscapes. I mean, they're getting started if they haven't already with the good weather we had in the past weekend. Any-
Ariel, are you officed here at Cascades or are you in Corvallis?
I am at the Extension Office in Redmond,
Okay.
which is at the Deschutes County Fair and Expo Center, the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
So you can find me there. Yeah, they don't have room for me in Cascade. I'm an extension employee, so it makes sense I'm at the extension office. And we also have a new forester that is starting tomorrow. So if you have she's really into wildlife habitat too and native plants. So if you have questions like that, around that or forestry, we have a new OSU extension forester. Her name is Jenna Dybel. I'm hoping to bring her to one of these Project Wildfire meetings.
All right, well, thanks, Ariel. That was a great presentation. We don't have too much time left, but we could go through updates. If anyone has any updates they'd like to share, we'll start on this side of the room. Are there any updates? A lot of head nods.
We've had a vacancy in our Red Cross disaster program manager position, and I think they've selected a new person. I haven't met him yet, but his name is Graham Bellairs, Bellairs, and his first date is going to be March 25th. So hopefully maybe get into one of our future meetings.
Okay. Kyle or anyone else? Ian? Anything?
Yeah, I think we'll go. I guess a lot of you have met or worked with Ross Huffman over the last couple of years as our stewardship forester and sisters. If you're not aware, Ross has taken a new position as the manager of our Helitack program in John Day. So great promotion for him. Sad to see him go. And today I wanted to introduce Austin. Austin Reimer is our new stewardship forester and sisters serving Deschutes County and Jefferson County West 97. So that's our big update for you all, is that this will be your new contact here going forward.
So will that be for the Firewise communities then? The
Uh,
OSU has been integral in that.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
oh, yeah, we,
State.
he will partake in some of that. We're trying to get some of our fire staff a little more involved in that. It's, so that's another position that we're hiring right now out of Sisters, so, you'll see a new face there as well.
Yeah, because we heard from some of the communities that they were working with Ross and then it was kind of up in the air for a while.
So Miles is the interim right now, right?
Yeah, Miles has been helping out a lot, through the co-op, so he's our fire staff, in Prineville. But through the fire prevention co-op, he's been helping out a lot with the Firewise stuff, and he'll continue to do so. But we'll add Austin into that, and then when we get our new fire staff and sisters, we'll add them as well. Yeah, introduce yourself at all.
Yeah, no, not much to say, so just a pleasure to be here.
What's your last?
Congratulations.
Reimer,
Welcome to the meeting.
thank you.
I just wanted to thank Kevin and Corinne for putting together the sweat equity program, which we're gonna partake in, and we were actually gonna, from the May 6th to June 3rd, we will have bins on our Butte, and the free bins and the free disposal is awesome. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think we'll have it a little more streamlined next year, but I think successful.
And I just want to thank Corinne for coming today. One thing we really didn't talk about was landscape, your furniture outside and the dangers of that, if you've got cushions. I remember a beautiful house in Aubrey Butte burned down because cigarettes got into the bark. And then this mega house burned down a couple of years ago. And you've always got to think about what are you doing with your furniture? And then my story, if you haven't heard, a house in a community in Malibu burned down because the ember went into the screening. The screening was too big on, it was a brand new house in this community and it burned to the ground because it was sucked in. So if we have any kind of wind at all, those pieces of bark will blow and they'll blow for quite a while. If you will remember, we had that 70-mile-an-hour wind in September of 2020 when we lost all those homes in Oregon. And it's, you've got to be so prepared when you have that kind of a situation. So really think about the rock mulch is really quite a great opportunity here because you can get it in beautiful colors that really are very attractive.
Yeah, thank you for adding those points.
Well, it's, 359 homes burned when the fire went around my house and 3 people died. So you've got to be, I'm so proud of our whole community, the fact that we're almost 70, fire away. What?
More than 7.
Oh my gosh, we have really done a great job. It's like, it was 35 when I started, so I'm incredibly proud of the community. Yeah, to be prepared is really, because that day, you've got to be prepared. It's got to happen now.
I've worked for a number of fire-risk communities. We're second in the state and third in the nation or something like that?
75, great.
For number of fire risk communities. By county. Yeah, I took up more time than I needed, so I will pass the baton. Sorry.
Well, great to hear it.
It's okay.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here today. Oh,
Did you have any updates?
No, I think we covered them.
okay.
Yeah, come to the fairs.
Sure.
So Thursday afternoon, we have another Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition meeting, which is at the County Roadhouse on 27th from 3 o'clock to 4:30. And everybody's welcome.
It's 2 to 3:30.
2 to 3:30. I have all my other meetings are 3 to 4:30, sorry. 2 to 3:30, 2 to 3:30.
At the road department.
I just wanted to express some appreciation for a pilot program that's starting that will affect underserved communities, including LaPine. Incentive program, I think it's $250. The way I understand it, it's a sweat equity kind of program, but it will give some incentive for people to do some work and also I think that they're being encouraged not to burn the slash, and so that might go a ways towards being able to deal with materials they create. And then for the UDRC, we have a number of neighborhoods that aren't so organized. And we happen to be a 501c3 nonprofit. And so we've been able to, on a case-by-case basis, we've been able to like sponsor a community so that they can have access to a grant that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And I'm happy to say that's given us some good results.
Thank you, everyone. It's a couple minutes after 9:30, so. hope you had an
Is
enjoy-
anybody on Zoom at the race time?
Anyone on Zoom have anything to add? We lost most of them.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're getting the.
I will be.
Are you?
Well, I was gonna talk to board.
Hard to get it.
The doctor's bike program,
Oh,
for cheap grants mitigation.
You pick up
Then
the
just-
accent?
Your church. I love that you know that.
You know what, I don't.
Elizabeth,
That's.
I can't remember his name. He actually. He is gonna be.
We want to do more of a Q&A.
Okay.
So Elizabeth is kind of leads them,
Yeah.
and then it's more Q&A for him, because he doesn't like to present it, so.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to get
He'll be the
stuff like an over the big.
I can just kind of go over the.
Yeah, we might have to
Talk about fire fuel or ramp rapid.
Well, maybe we're just gonna private and just stick with
That
it.
you could use. If you want to,
See what-
then they can talk about that.
You want to go first then?
Yeah. I think it'd probably be better.
Yeah.
for-
Yeah, 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 yeah,